Okay, right. And we are live. Apologies for the slightly slow start. Just drawing a punk badger to kick things off, and then I shall start the show proper. Hello Daniel, hello Grant, good to see you all. Ben. If you're just joining us, just kicking things off with a punk badger. Because why not? Let's get the face in there. He's looking quite rat-like for a badger, but not necessarily a bad thing. Chunky up that face a little bit. And of course, a mohawk, but we'll keep it striped in keeping with the badger style. Just thicken up this stripe a little bit, make it a little bit more distinct. And I think he's nearly ready. Yeah, I think that'll do. I'm not going to fill in the jacket because I'll be here all day. And there you go, it's a punk badger. Just try and shuffle that back a little bit in case the edges are getting cropped. And there we go. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm just going to shuffle him over. So hello and welcome to this week's Doodle Jam. This is now the 6th episode. Yeah, I've been doing this a while now. It's yeah, it doesn't feel like that long. But yeah, this episode is going to be themed around comics, and more specifically British comics. Is when I decided to do a theme around comics. I realised it's too big. It's too big an area. There's too many comics that I like that I want to talk about. So I'll split it into two. So this week is going to be British comics, and then next week I'm talking about the sort of big name American comics. I may do some more comic themed episodes later down the line, but in the meantime I'm just going to do these two and then move on. So I'm going to start in the obvious place, which is the Beano. I mean, I guess the Beano really was probably my first exposure to any kind of comics, as I imagine is the case for a lot of British kids, as well as the Dandy, the Betamax to Beano's VHS. And yeah, I mean, because they, I used to buy the ones that were coming out when I was a kid, but also my dad had a bunch of the older annuals from the 70s, which are a little bit more dated. I mean, every Dennis the Menace story back in the 70s basically ended with him getting a beating from his dad, usually with a slipper. It's quite a little time capsule, annuals. But yeah, so I'm gonna start things off. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna play an interactive drawing game, which have been sadly absent the last couple of weeks. What I'm going to do, I want you to pick a public figure. It can be a celebrity, a politician, just anyone famous that looks distinctive that I'm likely to know. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to imagine them in their youth and draw them in the style of a Beano character, a la Dennis the Menace or the Bash Street Kids. So if you want to suggest some names to me regarding the comments, I'm reading the comments by tuning into this on my Instagram. So if you're watching this on the floor, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and sort of switch between so I can get comments from both sides. But yeah, I apologise if I miss your comment or if I for whatever reason. So I'm going to try and keep track of it. But yeah, if you want to hurl some names at me, let's find a public figure that we can Beano-fy. Barry, okay, I like that. That's a good start. Tim Burton. Now he would work very well as a Beano character, actually. Yeah, I like that idea. I'm just going to switch over to the floor, see if we've got any suggestions from there. Dominic Cummings, Mary Berry again, excellent. Okay, I think I'm going to go with Tim Burton because I think he has a lot of potential as a cartoon character. As I mean, he has explored himself in various stylized self-portraits. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay. So, get started with some Big Eyes, which is actually the name of one of his films, although I didn't intend that pun. I'm quite pleased with it. And often the Beano characters, their eyes were kind of one singular unit, like Sonic the Hedgehog. So I'm going to try and keep with that. Well, it's lucky it's Tim Burton because I've just given him accidental but we'll run with that. Get some nice thick eyebrows. Give him a sort of anxious look. It's pretty much his signature look. Quite a fan of Tim Burton, particularly his animated works. I'd recommend the short film Vincent if you've not seen it. It's a stop motion tribute to Vincent Price. Utterly delightful. Okay, yeah. Just going on memory with what Tim Burton looks like. If I recall, he has a long nose. I'm going to give him the little button nose of Dennis the Menace. I don't think that would quite suit him. Something like that. He has quite distinctive teeth, so make sure to include them. Fatty rat-like teeth. So I'm sure a comparison he wouldn't object to. Just thicken up that black under his eyes. So for anyone just joining, I'm attempting to draw Tim Burton in the style of the Beano. There's a little sort of button chin. And quite low down ears. Remember, his ears are fairly prominent. He's starting to look a little bit like Bert of Bert and Ernie. Burton and Ernie. Okay, I think I'm going to need to switch to a thicker pen for his hair. I don't know what his hair is looking like these days, but I'm going to go with his signature kind of Robert Smith, Edward Scissorhands do that he was rocking in the 90s. I think that's the image most people would associate with him. I too wish I hadn't thrown out my old Beanos. I agree with you there, Daniel. Lots of old comics and toys I had to get rid of as a kid that I wish I hadn't. We moved around quite a bit. And I've always been a hoarder. Sometimes you just got to clear out your crap. I'm just going to try and fill this in quickly and neaten up the edges afterwards. Well, I've got the thick pen, I'll get his body in there as well, as he usually wears black. Imagine him wearing an Edgar Allan Poe shirt. Okay. I was going to do a suit, but I do like that idea. So, we'll do a little mini Beano style Edgar Allan Poe. I might need to switch back to the smaller pen. Okay, this may have been a bad idea. That doesn't look anything like Edgar Allan Poe. That looks more like Magnum P.I. But sure, why not? Magnum P.I. dressed as Wednesday Addams. It's not a phrase I ever thought I would say. Tim Burton often mistakenly credited as having made the Addams Family movie in the 90s. That was Barry Sonnenfeld. Also often mistakenly credited with The Nightmare Before Christmas, which, although it was based around his idea and his sketches, was actually directed by Henry Selick, who's one of the greatest directors working in stop motion animation. Big up Henry Selick. I mean, there's no denying that the film carries Burton's visual style. But he didn't actually direct the film, as he's often stated to have done. Oh no. This sort of looks like now what would have happened to Dennis the Menace if he grew up and started doing heroin. Nearly done now. The rest of this black filled in. Okay, I think that'll do. It's Tim Burton, Beano-fied. Bear with me a moment. Okay, so moving on to the next thing. I'll bring Tim back out later. At the end of the episode I'll do a quick roundup of all the sketches that I've done so far. Okay, now I'm confused because apparently I just commented wow, so I'm going to assume that that's Dave at the floor and not me tooting my own horn. Right. So, last week I did a quick kind of roundup of some of my favourite illustrators, some of the illustrators that have been kind of most influential to my drawing over the years. But there was one name that I realised afterwards that I completely forgot to mention, and he's in fact probably one of the single most influential illustrators that I've come across. He is a legend of both British comics and of the music industry, and that is Jamie Hewlett, who created Tank Girl and then went on to create Gorillaz. He is in fact one half of Gorillaz, along with Damon Albarn. And Jamie Hewlett has a really just amazing, distinctive style. I mean, I think everyone would recognise his work now since Gorillaz becoming so world renowned. And although I wouldn't say that I draw particularly in a style akin to his, in fact I've tried to draw in his style and it's quite difficult to replicate. But I strive to have a style as kind of distinctive and as clear as that. Whenever you see a Jamie Hewlett illustration, you know exactly that is his work. So I've got a couple of examples here. I've got my collection of Gorillaz CDs. This CD I've now had for about 20 years, which makes me feel seriously old. And we've got Demon Days here as well. But this album in particular is really nice. I mean, there's so much great artwork to be enjoyed. I just want to give a quick shout out to Gorillaz as kind of as a concept, really, I suppose. but yeah, I think the idea of an animated band is one of those unique ideas that can only really happen once, and I'm glad that it was these guys that did it. They did an amazing job. So I'm going to pay tribute to Jamie Hewlett now. While I just get set up, I'm trying to share a little story. When a few years ago, the British Library held an exhibition celebrating the history of British comics, and as part of that, Jamie Hewlett and Alan Martin, the co-creators of Tank Girl, did a kind of guest lecture, sort of telling the story of how it all came together. And there were so many great stories within that. But particularly one thing I really enjoyed is because Tank Girl was quite a groundbreaking comic. It was very edgy and anarchic. But they revealed in that talk that they only got away with half the stuff that they did because they were so late in delivering the illustrations that the editors didn't have time to go through it. They just had to send it straight to press. So once Hewlett and Martin figured that out, they then kind of pushed the boat out even further, and they slipped in some really some really bold satire and just kind of outlandish material that never would have got published if the editors had had time to actually read it. So I thought that was just quite a fun story. I enjoy that kind of anarchy. So obviously, music-wise, I had to choose a Gorillaz song for this. The choice was tough because there's a lot of great Gorillaz songs. But the one I've gone for, I decided on this because the music video for this song is basically like a scene from the animated Tank Girl movie that really ought to exist but doesn't. Instead, we got the terrible live-action movie from the 90s. And in fact, in that talk, Jamie Hewlett was saying that the only fun day they had on the set of that movie was the first day they showed up and the production team had built the tank that Tank Girl drives based on the illustrations, full-size working tank. And Hewlett and Martin just got in it and had a ride around one day. They said that was amazing. Everything else was a disaster. So anyway, I'm going to stop rambling, and this is a tribute to Jamie Hewlett.
The music that we choose, it's 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 the music that we choose. The world is spinning too fast, I find that Nike shoes to keep myself tethered to the days I tried to lose. My mama said, slow down, you must make your own shoes. Stop dancing to the music of gorillas in a happy mood. Keep my groove on. Jungle, watching a fake trail, caught up in the conflict between his brain and his tail. And if the times are living, then we got nothing to lose. The message is the music that we choose. Keep my groove on. Get the cool, to shine. 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 Get to the pump, get to the pump, get to the pump. Get to the pump, yes, I'm get to the pump. Get to the pump, get to the pump, get to the pump.
And there we go. That was a tribute to Jamie Hewlett, vaguely in the style of Jamie Hewlett. Had a slight palaver there with Tipp-Ex on the pen. Didn't really give it enough time to dry. I'll see if I can just improve those edges a little bit. And there we go. That's Jamie Hewlett. And Daniel, it was my absolute pleasure to play the remix and not the original version. Usually I would say the original is generally superior, but that is one case where the Soul Child remix is absolutely better than the original version of the song. I don't think anyone can really argue with it, and that's why that's what they released as a single and made a music video for. So, moving on. They're back into place. And we'll move on to another drawing game. Now, so this time I'm going to do another similar thing. So again, looking for a suggestion for a public figure. But this time, rather than drawing them as a kind of Beano style character, I'm going to turn them into a superhero / supervillain, depending on who the suggestion is. We'll just kind of interpret it as it goes. So first off, I'm going to ask for suggestions for a public figure, and then I'm going to ask for suggestions for a possible superpower or some costume ideas. But let's start with the name. So yeah, just throw any names at me, same as before. Anyone that's kind of famous and easily recognisable, someone that I'm likely to be able to tell. Ainsley Harriott, okay. Going to quickly hop over to the floor, see if we've got any suggestions coming in there. Just bear with me a moment. More paper set up. Okay. Let's see what other suggestions we've got. Oh, okay. Rick Mail, excellent. And Hey Shangley, good to see you there. Rob Zombie, Ryan Gosling. Okay. So, just having slight troubles reading back through the comments here. Okay. Well, I'm gonna go with Rick Mail because he's a British comic icon. I mean, he doesn't make British comics, but he is himself a comic, or rather he was, and also star of the comic strip. The comic strip Presents. So no one really more appropriate to turn into a comic character. Okay, I think I'm going to need to switch pens because this one's got Tipp-Ex on it now. Now, Rick Mail is certainly a distinctive chap. Let's hope I can draw him from memory. Shouldn't be too much trouble. Watched a lot of Bottom and the Young Ones when I was a kid. Drop Dead Fred. Okay, so now Princess Diana Zombie. Okay, well that idea might have to be come back to. But yeah, so for now, so I'm going to draw Rick Mail. So if you can now throw some suggestions at me for possible superpowers that a Rick Mail superhero could have. Any ideas for a costume? Able to walk on marmalade. That is an excellent suggestion. Might be difficult to visualise, but definitely able to walk on marmalade. Okay. I was also, but I think the marmalade has spoken, and he can shoot cake icing from his fingers. I'm not going to do that, only because if I draw that, it could easily be misconstrued. Walking on marmalade we can do somehow. Trying to decide what kind of age Rick Mail to draw here. I'm going to go for sort of bottom phase Rick Mail. A little bit jowly with the long receding hair. Obviously going to have a look of general disgust about him. Flared nostrils. Oh god, well he looks quite hideous. I don't know if this quite looks like Rick Mail yet. Weirdly it looks more like Greg Davis, who does look quite like Rick Mail and played his son in a sitcom. But we'll see. I'll give him a sort of Robin style eye mask. Keep it nice and superhero-y. That should slightly help to cover up the bad likeness also. Tricks of the trade. Better make sure that I have an orange pen at the ready. Dirty Y fronts over trousers. Perfect. Yes, great suggestion, Bao. That's exactly what he needs. I think I'm going to keep his classic shirt and tie, but we'll superhero-fy it around that. Maybe on his tie, he can have a jar of marmalade. There we go. His hair needs a little bit of building up. And now he looks like Bill Hicks, I don't know. Probably should have dug out a picture of Rick Mail before I started this, but that's the fun of the Doodle Jam. I don't entirely know what's going to happen. See, now part of the trouble is that I've drawn him at such a size that I don't know that I'm going to be able to fit his feet into this drawing, and therefore how is he going to walk on marmalade? I'm going to figure that out as I go. In this hand he definitely needs to have a frying pan. I've forgotten to make his outfit very superhero-y, so I'm going to try and jazz it up a bit as I go. I'm going to add a splash of colour shortly. Another great suggestion from Daniel there. See, Shannon agrees. There we go. Because Rick Mail is never complete without a frying pan to hand. Get those dirty Y fronts in there. stains in there. Lovely. Now it looks like he's scratching his crotch. That wasn't really intentional. So yeah, his legs are definitely going to go off the edge of this page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some blue tack and I'm going to do some rudimentary canvas extension. I say canvas, this is just paper, but let's get a fresh piece in there. So that ought to cover it. Okay, so he's not going to completely fit in the frame for now. So I'm just going to draw in the legs and then I'll zoom it out so that you can see it properly. We've got to get those legs in, walking on marmalade, of course. He's apparently barefoot. He is. His powers only work when he's barefoot. If he wears boots, his feet just go straight through the marmalade. Yeah, the stains could also be misconstrued. This is true. Now what we need. See, the only problem with this power is the only time when it is of any use whatsoever is when there's enough marmalade that you could sink in it, and therefore walking across it would actually be a power and not just walking. Let's get some hair on those legs. I give them some knee pads. Cover up the divide. Make it a little bit more superhero-y. Some elbow pads as well while I'm at it. Some fingerless gloves. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to switch over to orange. I wasn't necessarily going to colour this piece, but I feel like the orange is necessary to really sell this idea. And of course, plenty of orange in here. And leave some gaps to give it that glistening look. And all over his feet. A little bit up his legs, of course. make his frying pan orange as well, why not? Just a little balance the image a little bit. Okay, well I think that'll do for that one. It is Rick Mail as a superhero with the uncanny ability to walk across marmalade like some kind of conserved Jesus. Honey Monster. Would he not battle a jam monster? Okay, I see. There's been a whole conversation going on while I've been absorbed in drawing, so I'll check back in on that later. I would be interested to see what his enemy would be. It's I guess it would be Adrian Edmondson walking on clotted cream, maybe. I don't know. I'll have a think about that, but that could be fun. But yeah, I'm really happy with how that came out. Rick Mail was a great suggestion, so thank you for that, Shannon. And actually, because I included the orange, it's kind of the style is actually reminding me of those old Beano annuals where they used to only print in one colour for the sake of cost, and there would just be, you know, each page would just be different tones of orange and black, or blue or green or whatever the colour was. But yeah, I like that. That's but what do we call him? We're gonna need another suggestion for that. So he's Rick Mail, and he walks on marmalade. There's got to be a pun in there somewhere. Rick Marmalade? I don't know if that works. Marman. That could work. Sticky Rick. Rick Marmalade, yep. Gelatino. No, I think we'll go with Rick Marmalade. It's an easy pun, but it's there. So that's Rick Marmalade. I'll just dismantle him, and we'll come back to him later. Oh, his legs are still there. He looked kind of more disturbing without his legs. Right, what am I doing next? Okay, well I'm going to move swiftly on. Now the next part, I did have a performance illustration plan, but in the interest of time I'm just going to skip over it and come back to that maybe another time. But I just want to give a brief mention to perhaps the most iconic of British comic series outside of the Beano and the Dandy, and that is 2000 AD. I have an annual here from 1982 rather. Picked this up at a car boot sale some years ago. 2000 AD has been going since the 70s, when 2000 AD as a year was a distant future. And here they are in 2020, still going strong, still called 2000 AD. In fact, I have an issue here from last year, so you can see the journey. But yeah, 2000 AD is a great series. Each issue, similar to the Beano, it has about 4 or 5 different stories that will kind of continue across the weeks. And it just offered a really great platform for British comic illustrators. Many of the kind of the top illustrators who work on kind of Marvel and DC comics started with 2000 AD. Brian Bolland, Simon Bisley, and in fact Jamie Hewlett also had a comic strip in 2000 AD called Hooligan's Haircut, about a guy whose hair had a sort of portal to other dimensions. It was all kinds of surreal. So shout out to 2000 AD. I also just want to give a quick shout out to Sovereign Comics, which I found out about recently. Sovereign Comics is a black-owned UK-based comic publisher, and they kind of focus on kind of contemporary relatable issues. I found out about them through The Floor. It's co-run by Phoenix Icefire, who's also a great rapper and member of The Floor, which is how I came to find out about them. So I'm going to look more into that. So yeah, shout out Sovereign Comics. And then yeah, so I've got one more piece for the finale, but before I go on to that, I'm just going to do a quick round of the animal combination game. Doesn't really relate to the theme, but I haven't done it in a couple of weeks, and it's always good fun. So throw some animals at me, and I will chuck them together. Okay. Awaiting your animal suggestions now. Giraffe, excellent. Rhinoceros, snail. Okay, well, let's start with the giraffe's neck. That's nice and easy. Usually their most distinctive feature. And I guess with a snail shell. Hornet, sloth, mollusk. Okay, I'm probably not going to be able to get all of these in, but I'll get in as many as I can. Tortoise, excellent. I saw hornet there. I kind of feel like a giraffe's face and the hornet's face could be merged somehow. Some nice pointy mandibles in there. And we'll keep the giraffe's ears. These little nodules. I'm not entirely sure what these things are on giraffes because they don't seem kind of big or substantial enough to be antlers. And they look kind of squidgy. I don't know if they're solid or squidgy. Some of the giraffe pattern in there. Bit of texture on that shell as well. And I guess actually they kind of look like the snail's eyes now as well. So what else did we have? There was rhinoceros, there was tortoise. Okay, we'll give him some chunky tortoise legs. Well, they kind of look furry. They're supposed to be spiny. That's fine. We had some furry animal suggestions as well. All kind of undershell going. A bit of wrinkles on his neck. Blend the two together. I really should have given him a rhinoceros horn. I don't know that I can really fit that in now, so I guess we'll give him a rhinoceros arse. Thank you for the excellent animal fact there, Shankly. They are ossicone. They are similar to antler and horns, but not quite the same. Okay. Good to know. Give him the kind of leathery hide of a rhino. Chunky little feet. Apologies for the paper shuffling about as I go. Here's his other back foot. I think he's nearly there. Yeah. Just carry on that giraffe texture a little way across him, make it feel a little bit more unified. I was considering giving him hornet wings, but I don't know if that's really going to fit. So yeah, I think I'll leave him there. It's bizarre, but it all holds together. I think if I try and add any more features, it's just going to get nonsensical. So thank you very much for all your suggestions. The animal combination game is always fun. And that will be back again next week. That is something I'm going to try and squeeze in every week because, you know, it doesn't really need a theme and it's always fun. We've had some really, really great animals to come out of this particular challenge. Maybe at some point I'll do a little roundup of all of the animal combinations that we've done over the various Doodle Jams. But for now, time's a wasting, so I'm going to move on to the finale. Just get the mirror back into place. Get my paper at the ready. Okay. So I've mentioned a few British comic illustrators over the course of the episode, and particularly ones that have gone on to great success across the pond. But for this finale, I want to talk about a comic writer. He's arguably the greatest comic writer of all time. If you are a comic head, you probably already know who I'm talking about. And he, like so many others, started out with 2000 AD and other kind of small British publications, and moved on to work for DC. I think Marvel at some point, but he's done quite a lot of work with DC, including a particularly iconic turn on Swamp Thing, which is one of my favourite comics. I'm talking, of course, about Alan Moore. Alan Moore is one of the most well-known writers in comics. Well, he's probably the single most well-known writer in comics, because not only did he create Watchmen, which is arguably the greatest graphic novel ever made, he also wrote From Hell, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. As I say, he worked on Swamp Thing. He did V for Vendetta, and basically he has quite a history of writing excellent graphic novels that have been adapted into terrible movies. He wants nothing to do with the movies that have been made of his work. Watchmen doesn't have his name on it anywhere. And tragically, Watchmen's probably the best movie adaptation of his work, and even that is very questionable. It gets a lot of things right, but it also gets a lot of things really quite wrong. But anyway, forgetting about the movies that he's been involved in, I'm a big fan of his writing, and particularly of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is possibly the worst of all of the films based on his work, but one of his greatest comics. It's basically the Avengers with Victorian literary characters, and that's just all sorts of fun. So this is going to be my tribute to Alan Moore. Now, I think I'm running low on time, so if this gets cut off before I'm done, then I just will say a quick thank you for tuning in and for all your suggestions. I will do this again at the end, but just in case. This has been the Doodle Jam. I'm Spike Zephaniah, and this is Alan Moore. And there it is, a tribute to Alan Moore, the wise old wizard of comics. Moore is fascinated with magic and the occult, and there's magic with a K, not like magic with Paul Daniels. He's a fascinating character, and I'd say one of the greatest writers in British history, not just of comics but in general. His works are unique, and if you're not familiar, then get to know. Let's try and get a slightly better angle on that, and there we go. It's a certainly distinctive looking chap, buried in hair. And that concludes the Doodle Jam. So I'll just do a quick roundup of all the drawings we've had so far. I'll move Alan over here. Just want to check this is still streaming. Okay. Oh, let's not forget his feet. Okay, and that should be everything. So we have the Punk Badger, Beano-fied Tim Burton, the Rick Marmalade, this combination of a giraffe, a tortoise, a hornet, a snail and a rhino. We have the great Alan Moore, and finally Jamie Hewlett. Okay, so that concludes this week's Doodle Jam. I believe this has already stopped on Instagram, but in case anyone's still watching on Facebook or wherever else, thank you for tuning in. I'll be back again next week with another comic themed episode. As I say, this time